How are you guys doing?
Great.
Yes. Good to be back. I was telling somebody earlier that I do not have the same talk I gave last time, so you were here last time, you won't get to hear the same thing. Though I may use some of the same illustrations, but I'll try to keep it simple. It's hard to start because it's a lot of things, but I think I wanna give a good start to the presentation. So basically, I don't have a picture of myself there. Usually, only dictators do that. I have a friend of mine put the presentation together because I told him I say so many things that I just need something to focus on. But I think it's important for me to share with you that I come as a parish priest. I'm not a missionary for CRS. I go on these trips for about 10 days, sometimes less, very busy trips in which they try to immerse me into what the work of the church is doing overseas. And in that I just get all the information I can get, but for the most part, I'm a parish priest, and I do parish priest things most of the time. Except that I do love the work of the church at all its levels. I preach, I celebrate the sacraments, and I did that in 1997. I was about to become a deacon. It's a little blurry because at the time the technology was not as good. But in 1997, I encountered what the church does, the Catholic Church does around the globe. You hear about it, but I had not seen it with my own eyes. And I think it was important for me to see what the church is doing. And as I tried to figure out what the church is doing, I wanted to see how it fits in the whole mission of the church, as opposed to think only on, well, we do nice works over there, and it's nice that we keep missionaries, usually with the understanding that we're evangelizing. But humanitarian aid, the work of the church is extensive. I'll give you a little introduction, and we'll go over a few numbers and statistics which usually help out. But when I went to Zimbabwe on that time in 1997, I encountered the church, and I was impressed by the work that the church does. It kind of follows the principles of Pope Paul VI, St. Paul VI, in his encyclical on human progress, in which he speaks about integral human formation. You know about human formation because you're in it. You know, we do it for priests, rightly so. The 4 pillars, and I'm sure you want to, all that. But integral human formation is the backbone of Catholic social teaching. It has to encompass the whole person. When I encountered that, I realized that we're not just having programs that just feed people and leave. My idea was like World Vision, growing up and seeing those shows, and you gotta send $19 a month, and then you'll be able to take care of a kid. You forgot to send your $19 a month, and you wonder what happened to the kid. That's a big problem, but I can give a talk on that. But the Catholic Church's approach is not that. Sometimes we like to do it simplistic, but it's not simple because it encompasses the whole person, the whole human person. So first of all, like Monsignor was saying, Catholic Relief Services is the bishop's arm for work internationally. It doesn't work by itself. It works under Caritas International, which is the Holy Father's charity arm. And each country has usually a Caritas, but in America we have to be different, so we call it CRS. But it's basically the same thing, Caritas. If you've heard of another country, Caritas is Caritas. And the work is the work of charity. It's very simple, but within the context of Catholic social teaching. So it is important for us to keep that in mind. So I'm going to show you a little video, and it's a little blurry, but that's technology at its limits.
Every so often, there's a story that changes everything. People's lives and the way we see the world. But through faith, anything is possible. We hear stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. People who see challenges a world away and make them their own. People who see potential for greatness in everyone. We call them our partners, our supporters, our staff, our friends. They're our family. They are our heroes, and they are changing the world. They help the poorest communities build back better when disaster strikes. They work alongside neighbors to nurture peace and justice where there is war and inequality. And they empower families to grow up healthy and thrive. Their courage and compassion transform people's lives and the way we see the world. They prove happy endings are possible. They help make them possible. Woven together, their stories are our story. A story of faith and love that has been told for 75 years and has touched millions of lives. It's a story that keeps getting better. It's the story of us.
Catholic Relief Service is celebrating 75 years. It started after the war, the Second World War, in helping some Polish refugees escape the war aftermath into Mexico. The war relief efforts was it called at the time, but now it has grown into 110 countries. We have about 17,000 collaborators around the globe. So it's a very large institution that is working around. But I want to get started with talking about a little bit of principle before we go into programs and how those things work. So as I went to Uganda in January, and during the trip I read this book. While I was there, it's a good balance, because you're looking to all these actions that the church is doing, and I thought it would be good to bring something very rational with me, so that, try to bring a balance to the life of the church, to bring things into context. And I came across with this quote that I wanted to share with you. The salvation of the world does not come in the final analysis from a transformation of the world or a political system that sets itself up as absolute and divine. Why did it caught my attention, Pope Benedict Emeritus, talking about this is because sometimes when we engage in humanitarian work is that we think that the objective is to get rid of all the problems of humanity. It's a temptation that we can face. Whether you work locally in your parish or you work globally, like on CRS, is always the same temptation. If I can just get rid of poverty, then everything will be solved. But in order to do that, I had to complete the work that was incomplete. So you will come out with the wrong Christology, because then you begin to think that Jesus did not complete the work. And now we fall into another problem that the compendium for the catechism, for the social doctrine of the church states. Jesus says, you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. And he makes this statement not to contrast the attention due to him with service of the poor, which is very easy for us to try to make those kinds of separations. To say, well, are you going to serve Jesus or the poor? But Jesus is trying to diffuse the situation when the woman comes and washes his feet and perfumes them. He makes this statement, Christian realism, while appreciating, on the one hand, the praiseworthy efforts being made to defeat poverty, and this is the word, is cautious, on the other hand, regarding ideological positions and messianistic belief that sustain the illusion that it is possible to eliminate the problem of poverty completely from this world. It's a temptation that we gotta be aware of. Because though the Lord asks us to call us to help poor and help those in need, we must always see it in a context of eschatology, which is what Jesus did in Matthew 25. This will happen only upon Christ's return, when he will be with us once more, forever. In the meantime, the poor remain entrusted to us. And I love that phrase from the Compendium on Catholic Social Doctrine, because the poor are given to us to take care of them. It's like parents who receive their children as a gift, and they gotta take care of them, are entrusted to them. For us, the poor are not a burden, but it's a gift that Lord is giving us for us to take care of them and help their lives and help them integrate their whole being as well. In the meantime, the poor entrusted to us, and it is this responsibility upon which we shall be judged at the end of time. Our Lord warns us that we shall be separated from him if we fail to meet the serious needs of the poor and the little ones who are our brethren. So, when we're going to be judged at the end of time, when the Lord calls us to himself and he separates the good from the bad, he's going to look at our acts of charity, how we took care of the least, our brothers and sisters. It's very important you come to think about it, because this is our salvation which is at stake. It's what the Lord is entrusting to us. So for us, it's always to look at things in a balanced way. Now, I have some handouts if you want to know more details. I'll have some of this available after this, but some statistics as to what the work of CRS is doing. Some examples are health and social services. We're in 42 countries doing this, 119 projects. Yes, we work in relief efforts, first of all, to try to alleviate emergencies, hurricanes, earthquakes, famines, refugees, war that affects people. But we do a more holistic approach. So some of it is health and social services. We do lasting change, which is the sustainability. What that entails is that you cannot just go help people and then leave. We have to stay there to rebuild. That's a little more work, and then you gotta build an economy. For example, if a typhoon hits somewhere in the world, we cannot just go and fix the things out, but we gotta stay there. And we work with other organizations as well, as I will show in one example in Uganda. And the thing that we do best is emergency response and recovery. That means something happens and we're there within hours. It's very easy. If you want to look at the news, for example, and you see that a tragedy happened, I encourage you to go to CRS.org. It's very simple. And in CRS.org, just put the emergency you're seeing in Honduras, in Nepal, in Kenya. Just put in the search engine inside CRS.org, and you will see what the Catholic Church is doing in partnership with other organizations in order to assist in those humanitarian needs. And another big program we have is agricultural livelihood in 51 countries, 124 projects. What that means is education for people and actually provide resources so that they can grow crops in a more modern way. So that's a lot of the work that we generally do. But today, I want to talk about migration. And when I say migration, I'm going to talk about immigration, because that will be another issue, another topic, much extensive in regards to immigration in the United States and its policies. But here it's more about a global reality. Migration around the world. And these are some of the principles that U.S. bishops teach us about migration in Catholic social teaching. And so I'll just go through them briefly. If at any moment you have a question, just raise your hand. And I'll see if I can answer you. If not, I'll send you someone. You can Google it as well. Okay, in regards to migration, people have the right to migrate to sustain their lives and the lives of their family. This little goat is migrating somewhere. And this was in Burkina Faso. And when you go to Burkina Faso, in these trips, you go in there and they give you a goat. I don't know why. Because as a sign of gratitude and love, they give you a goat. So you try to carry this goat back to the airport and then try to travel with the goat. In case you wonder what the goat is doing there. We ended up taking him somewhere else. But Pope Pius XII, he wrote up on Exus Familia, placing the church squarely on the side of those seeking a better life by fleeing their homes. People have a right to migrate if there's problems at home. They cannot keep you there. That's a basic principle on Catholic social teaching. There are three principles. The second one, a country has a right to regulate its borders and to control immigration. That means that a moral person cannot consider only what is good for his or her own self and family, but must act with the good of all people as his or her guiding principle. In places like where refugees, for example, speaking of Syrian refugees, or other places where Christians are being persecuted and they have to squeeze out of conflicts between tribes and other political unrest, they have a right to migrate. It's a human right to flee what's causing their problems, specifically their family. But the host country has a right to certain limits. But both sides need to work towards the common good, the good of all, not just individual good. And the balancing, third principle is here. A country must regulate its borders with justice and mercy. I'll talk a little bit about that when we enter into the situation in Uganda, which is where I visited in January, and we saw people from South Sudan migrating to Uganda due to a civil war that's taking place there. How's migration by numbers? Right now, more or less, I mean, we don't have the numbers exactly, but right now there are 65.6 million people displaced. That means they're not home. They're either moving around, they're in refugee camps, they're transient from one place to another, but most of them are just fleeing. This is not tourists. This is just people who do not have a place to stay. 65.6 million people are around the globe. Of those, 22.5 million are refugees. That means that they had to live where they had in their bags sometimes, and nothing else, not even an ID, not even a picture, not even a certificate of birth, nothing. And they have to go and start somewhere else. 22.5 million. 10 million stateless people. What happened is that their state or their country of origin changed their laws, and for some reason they fell off it. Because they belong to the wrong tribe, the wrong race, the wrong ethnic group, the wrong religion. So they're disowned by their own country. So
we were in the Dominican Republic. Ministering to the Haitian migrants who would be considered stateless people. They can't go back to Haiti. They're not even recognized in the Dominican Republic. That would be a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and for us it's kind of hard to conceptualize that reality, because I said, I'm a U.S. citizen. That's it. Well, when you're not a citizen anyway, what do you do with it? People can just disappear into nothingness. Now, of all those, only 189,000 rough people of refugees have been resettled. In other words, they have found a new permanent home. The other refugees, they're still roaming around. We gotta find ways to help them. Where the world's displaced people are being hosted, it gives you there more or less in Europe, Australia, Middle East, all over the world. South Sudan has 1.4 million refugees have left the country. Afghanistan 2.5 million, and Syria 5.5. So you can tell that these are the crisis center for refugees right now. Why do people migrate? And I think it's the same reason that you probably hear from anybody else. But there are what they call the push factors and the pull factors. People don't just get because they want to leave, but there is something behind. The conflict, political instability, natural disaster, climate change, unemployment, and lack of economic opportunity. In regards to climate change, we're not talking about global warming or anything like that. We're talking about climate change is that there's droughts. A drought is a climate change. For good or bad, we don't know what caused it. We just know that there is a drought in some places in Africa, and that people need to leave because there is no water. So that's considered climate change. The pull factors are peace, shelter, land, jobs, social mobility, family, and community. There are 12.6 million people living in internal displacement in Africa at the end of 2016 as a result of conflict and violence. People just keep moving around. So the borders in Africa, some of them are very porous, and people just displace from one place to the other. And it's a big reality and a big problem. And this causes humanitarian catastrophes. When you have 200,000 people leaving at once, and they just have to land somewhere, and then you have a host community that is not ready to accept them, and they don't have the economic means to sustain them. what do? We have to provide. In other countries, in other places to provide.
Just my clarification, internal displacement, that's, they haven't left their country, but they've been somewhere else in the country?
No, that would be in Africa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we have
Within
three,
the
we have
continent.
three, a number of Nigerians,
Okay.
more than three. We
Maybe
have
they
like
can-
2.9, what does that say, 2.9 displaced?
Nigeria 2.6.
So what
No,
would-
2.0 million.
So 2 million in Nigeria,
Yes.
where would they, more or less, where would they be from? South Sudan, they've come over, or like Algeria, where are they coming from? Like just that one example, because that hits us personally.
Well, I think it will come from the neighboring countries. People just go,
I
but
think most of them are in northeast Nigeria and part of Cameroon, and of course in Lake Chad, because of Boko Haram.
okay.
Also, yeah, so it's from those three countries.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
they're
no.
leaving.
So that Nigeria 2.0 is people leaving Nigeria.
Yeah, they leave.
Oh, I thought that was people.
But sometimes they come. So, for example, in Uganda, South Sudanese escape. Most of them are Christians. Northern Ugandan is Muslim, and they come in, and they're the host community.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
they come
Got it.
right into the border to resettle there.
Okay.
Now, why is that important for the church? That's a question, because sometimes we can just look at all these numbers and say, well, maybe somebody else needs to be taking care of this. There are non-governmental organizations, also known as NGOs, who can help with all this. Why is the church getting involved in this? I think it's important. Pope Benedict, in his Jesus in Caritas, not Caritas in Veritate, he said why it matters. The church's deepest nature is expressing her threefold responsibilities of proclaiming the word of God, the kerygma martyria, that is the witnessing to the word of God, celebrating the sacraments, and exercising the ministry of charity. The way that Pope Benedict put it together is that to articulate this problem or this reality for the church is that everything is part of one reality of the church. We cannot compartmentalize the church and think that we should not, if we do in sacraments, teaching, and diaconia or service, they should compartmentalize them. I want to take care of this, but not this, or this, but not this. That's very convenient, but I don't think that's the Catholic way. The Catholic way is always this and that, as opposed to taking sides. It's always to integrate things. In our ministry, in your parish, you're going to find the same situation, perhaps not globally, but you're going to be finding parishioners who are in need. How would you address them and integrate them into the community at the same time providing for the teaching of the sacraments and the teaching of the doctrines of the church, all encompassed into one? It makes our job as priests harder because we have to integrate and we have to balance everything, as opposed to just doing one thing and not the other. It will be convenient if we can parse things, but it's not exactly what the Lord is asking us. An example, this is one of the largest refugee camps in the world. It's called Bidi. My pronouncement is probably not good, but it's good here. It's a lot of people. I'm going to give you a brief. There is Father David. He's right here. He's the pastor. He's the pastor of Bidi. Under his parish, it's mostly Muslim, so under his parish, he's got about 500,000 people. One parish, 500,000 people. Not all of them are Christian. The minority are Christian. But to these 500,000 people, you add 250 to 300,000 refugees settling from South Sudan into your own parish territory. And you only have 4 priests to help you. And I'll show you a little chapel in one of the slides. So your parish is multiplied, and most of them are Christians, the ones that are coming in. The work as a parish priest increases. What you have to do is much more. But then provide also for humanitarian. People are already poor there. And then the host community is poor. And then they welcome 250,000 people who are also poor and who don't bring anything with them. And not only that, but they can have very little skills that they can actually use in their society. So that's Bitty Bitty. It's a huge camp. This is the previous picture shows when you're just arriving there, this is what they arrive into. But things begin to progress with the help of humanitarian assistance, the involvement of the church and other organizations. They don't stay in a camp like this for a long period. It went from a camp and now it's a settlement. It's kind of graduated, as it were, from a camp to settlement, which means people can build houses and plan to stay there for a longer period of time. Now we can build schools, and I'll talk a little bit about that. This is the group of people that went with me. I think some of you may know some of the priests here. Father Vic is here. I think he came here before. Was he here last year? For a couple of years? Yeah. I'll give you an example of something we do. Catholic Relief Services has built over 1,500 homes for refugees, settlers in Bitty Bitty. This is what a house looks like when you just arrive in Bitty Bitty. A 97-year-old woman and her daughter-in-law lived there. Her son died in the war. And she lived there in this little thing. So CRS built this house for her, and that's her. And it's a small house, it's about 2 bedrooms. It's about the size, I would say it's smaller than the room I'm staying in. So, but it's 2 people live there, and they have a latrine outside, and we provide for that. And it's not what we would consider a big house, but it's a nice place for them to be. A house like that costs about $750. So for $750, this lady, 97-year-old, now has a place that she can call home. It's just right next to the other. This was their school. 2,000 children used to go to school there. When I went there, this school had just been vacated like the previous weeks. As is, they were using it as a school for 2,000 kids. How do you fit 2,000 kids there? You just taking turns, their classes all day. And then, So Catholic Relief Services built this. Obviously, this is only one section, but it's much larger. Well, it's not a whole university. It has about 12 classrooms and administrative, and also housing for teachers. Because before that, there was no housing for teachers. And the teachers had to live also in little campsites. So we provided with that. This is a chapel in Bitty Bitty. And what we're doing right there is like an open forum. I was talking with somebody about open forums yesterday. But this is they invited us over, and they knew that we were priests and deacons, and we were there, and most of them were Catholic, and they had questions. They're refugees, and most of their questions were complaints. I'll be honest with you. It's not all roses. Obviously, when you have to leave your country behind, and you come into a place, and you have no place to stay, and they give you a sleeping mat and a basin, plastic basin, and that's it. Find yourself a place. You're waiting for someone to get there until there is no complaining, So they see priests, they see deacons, and they say, this is the right time to complain. It's like a rector's conference.
Yeah.
The bathroom's not working, Father. But it's pretty much the same. We thought when we were walking in there, we thought we were going to be like, welcome, because we come in peace kind of thing. But no.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you for all you do. That lasted about 3 minutes. And then they told us, that the latrines are overflowing. We're still waiting for our homes. The priorities in housing is women, the elderly, and the sick. And women with children, the elderly, and the sick. And we're just building houses for them, so other people are like, well, we want a house too. So there is a tension in them because there is no running water. If there is a running water, there is CRS put a few pumps here and there, And you have to go to a central place where there is one pipe, and you just have to go and fill your tanks from there, your bottles. So this is massive. I mean, I was talking with the workers, the local workers for CRS, and they say that the work is huge, trying to provide for the host community and for the refugees. 800,000 people trying to bring water and the necessary things for them to live there, schools, teachers, and everything that entails. And there is no economy being built. Over there is no school systems. There is no tax money being used for any of this. So people have deficiencies. And some of them, they had homes in South Sudan and now they don't have anything. So it's hard. And somebody asked me, I was doing an interview for a local newspaper in Tucson, and they were asking me, Father, didn't you get discouraged? Because, 1,500 houses for 800,000 people is very little, like catching cold. But I think that's when I go back to at the beginning of our conversation here. We're doing the work of the Lord as the Lord provides as well. We cannot try to get frustrating and think negatively, because if I cannot fix everybody's problems, I'm not going to fix any. You just have to take things one at a time, and I deal with things as they come. But like Mother Teresa used to say, it doesn't make a difference, but it makes a difference for those people who will receive the benefits, even if there's just a few of them. So we gotta keep going. I found this little church. I'm myself building a parish right now, so I'm looking for ideas. So whenever I go to a place, I look at pictures of churches, because it's very interesting, to see the church is alive in all these places. I'll show you the picture of the cathedral. We went to say Mass at the cathedral, and in Kampala. Beautiful cathedral, huge cathedral, very close to the shrine of the Ugandan martyrs, and it was packed. About 4,000 people packed, shoulder to shoulder. It was a beautiful sight. The liturgy was beautiful. They were getting ready for ordinations, and they told me that the ordination Mass can last up to 6 to 8 hours. So what we did is we just went to the earlier Mass, so we didn't have to get started. But it was beautiful. It was for me. They wanted to take us to another Mass somewhere else, but no, they said to the cathedral. So we're going to be here only for once in a lifetime, so might as well go to the cathedral. And we could celebrate Mass with one of the newly ordained priests from the previous year, who was helping in the cathedral. And beautiful. People have people from different languages getting together to sing. And then we begin to hear the words of the Mass being sung in Latin. For me, it was a very, very profound reality, because they're playing Masses in English, but the parts of the Mass were in Latin, different tones than the ones I'm familiar with. But they wanted to keep everybody together, because people have different mother tongues, and they come together at the cathedral, and this is the way to unify. So it was a beautiful experience, and the priest, not very organized, I'm used to. For me, he turned to me and said, this is in the first reading, he turns to me and says, because he chanted the Mass, and he was chanting, and we just couldn't celebrate. He said, we don't know what we're doing. And he turned to me and said, would you chant the gospel? And I'm like, okay. I actually had a video, but I took it down. Would you chant the gospel? I said, okay. And I did chant the gospel. But then I see the altar servers coming and bringing the incense. You talk about incense. Oops. That's me. Tried to chant with that. In the cloud. It felt like the shaking of the Lord, was taking over. But it was a beautiful experience, though. Very, very profound. And it was the feast of the baptism of the Lord. So I I don't know, it was just a very lively experience. 4,000 people, the cathedral packed. And you know, most of them are young people.
I like the placement of the clock.
Yeah. Yeah, it tells you exactly. I had to look up, but I just read the gospel. I didn't get to preach. So this one, I wanted to take this picture because it gives us an idea as to how CRS works with other organizations. We're never alone. We're always working in partnership with, because we have worked with other organizations. The projects on Bidi, they're implemented by CRS, but they're supported by other organizations from Ugandan usually, but we carry it through. We bring the experts, we bring the engineers, the architects, the planning, the execution, the infrastructure, and the knowledge on how to do this. That's what we bring, and we carry it out. We build the schools, we build the water supplies, wells, and all those things. Many of these projects are funded by the U.S. government. So it's very important to understand the relationship between the organizations and how the funding works in regards to grants given by the federal government. Not all of them. That's not the only source of income for CRS. The little rice bowls that you do during Lent, that I think I see a few around today.
Yeah.
But those rice bowls help, and they actually fund many of these projects. But when you're working to build infrastructures that a government should build, we carry it through, but we work with funding from the government as well. One of the things that we do in CRS and Bidi is, is education. Basically education and sanitary conditions. You know, usually you hear commercials about organizations, $19 a month, and we'll send you a picture of a kid. Well, there is food, but then there is also, if you eat, you're gonna need a bathroom. You're gonna need sanitary conditions, vaccines, washing hands, and all those things need to be part of it. Otherwise, you're gonna have a disease going all over the place, and then you have bigger problems. So sanitation is one of the important jobs we do, and it's education. You just gotta keep educating people. Those are some of the sanitary conditions that we provide. This is Caritas, Uganda, and CRS working together. I want to talk a little bit about this program called SOCHI. It's called Sustainable Outcomes for Children and Youth, because it's a program that follows the thematic of Pope Francis in regards to accompaniment. It is not just a matter of bringing a truck and start helping people out. It is about getting to know their situations, their circumstances, and what is it that you can do to prevent problems down the line. By focusing on families with children and youth in preventing disease, education, a big problem, HIV and AIDS. And the CRS works through this program, but for sustainable outcomes, you need that accompaniment. We have social workers, and they go around the neighborhood, literally like Jehovah's Witnesses, knock on people's doors and tell them what's going on, how are things, how are you doing? My husband just died a few years ago, and now I don't have anybody to help me. I have 3 children. Then you need to follow up with them, and follow up with them through months, weeks, and record progress. So it requires a lot of work because you have to engage with people, sit down with them, get to know them better. So it's very important that we do that. This is a particular family that I'm gonna tell you more about them. These are 2 women, Beatrice and Rose. They had children. They have a total of 6 children. Some of the children are already grown and they moved out. But they were both widows, and their husbands had coffee plantations that they were leasing to a third party for income. Their 2 husbands died. So the women are in charge now of the house and the plantations, and they're not being paid a fair wage or fair rent from the renters. So what CRS began to work with them first was to help them with the kids and provide them education. And they were telling us how first teach them how to improve their sanitary conditions, how to prepare meals better, how to provide for the family, and then you begin to teach them how to grow coffee, how to turn their lease of land into a business, a marketable business. And for that, you need a lot of education, not only in accounting, but business management. So Beatriz is the one who took, this is Beatriz, this is Rose. Beatriz took on the business side, as it were, and they put their land together. They had to fight the people who were renting their land and begin to work with them and finding ways, and then how to produce coffee, how to produce with a certain consistency in order to enter a market, how to make it marketable, how to pack it, how to sell it, how to prepare it, how to enter into an organization with other coffee growers so that they can enter into the global market. This, from zero to today, it takes about 2 years, 2 or 3 years, from zero to actually selling coffee and packing it, ready for export. So you take someone from a situation in which they have nothing because they're widows, to owning a coffee plantation, growing coffee, producing coffee, and improving the crop to a point that they can actually enter in the market. That's the kind of, but you have to do it with them. You have to visit with them every week. You have to follow the steps. You gotta make sure that they make improvement, that you mark them, and that people put goals, and they meet them, teach them discipline of running a business. And it's possible in about 2 years. A similar is on that program, similarly, we had this young girl. Again, she's like 16 years old, and she got a micro loan for about $50 to get a sewing machine. They knock on her door, talk to her, what's your situation, and you walk with that person, you educate them, you teach them what a loan is, how to save, how to begin to invest, and then she begins to open a business. Then she has to rent a place and make dresses. Now she's got 2 employees that help her. So it is a 1 year between the knock on the door from CRS until running a little shop that she's making dresses to order. So it's about a year or so. Same thing with this young lady. She's also about 16 years old, and now she has a beauty shop. But again, somebody had to go and knock on the door, talk to her, get to know her situation, education, and then you begin to get started trading. And now, a year later, she started with $10. The microloan for her was $10. With $10, and now her business is net worth about $3,000. You know, and when I was talking to the reporter, she says, "And what do you, is that it? Is it gonna go bigger?" I said, "I don't know why you think like that." She's making a living. She's got employees. She's sustaining a family. She may not build a franchise yet, but it's interesting how people measures progress, you know. And I think that's a cultural mishap on our part, that we think that progress means that you open a McDonald's. You know? There's no progress. She's happy, and she feels good about what she's doing. So it's a good program. But that's the kind of sustainable accompaniment that we have to do with people. That takes resources. At the end of the day, we, I don't know what this is. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we just pray with them. These are younger people who are being recruited to be part of that program. So recruit them from the years of 10, 12. You got to recruit them when they're young so that you can help them prevent a lot of the problems that may take them into another direction. That's me just taking a selfie with them. Okay, this is, again, Pope Benedict. It sounds like outdated, but I read a lot of Pope Benedict. The missionary vocation of every Catholic, the mission ad gentes, that is towards the people, should be also today the constant horizon and paradigm of every ecclesial activity. It's like we have to look outward as a church, as pastors, as priests. We have to look outward, not inward, not be so caught up with our own things, but see what's going on out there in life, in other people's situations. Going to Uganda, somebody said, is it necessary, Father, that you go to Uganda? You have a parish here, you're busy. I think it was necessary because you have to see these things firsthand. I could have Skyped my way to Uganda, probably. But I think you need to be there. As priests, and for you guys, future priests, you need to be present. It's so important just to be there. And not only because you're going to make a show, an entrance, but because you need to be nurtured as well from the exchange with people. This is a beautiful sunset in Biribiri. It looks very peaceful, but it's actually a very chaotic point. And I recorded it because I have a video for it. I'll play it tonight. Because we had to leave the camp where 800,000 people are before sunset. I mean, the jeeps that we ride along, they have like 3 spare tires on the roof. Not for no reason, it's because the tires blah blah in these roads. So if something happens to us after sunset, see you later. You gotta get out of there. Nobody's gonna come from the UN or anywhere else to try to help you out, and it can turn things a little unsafe. So we were there, and because our schedule extended, we were trying to get out of the camp before sunset, so we're just following the sun, and we just kept going and going very fast. It was was a little stressful because if something would happen, we just stay there. And then, I don't know, didn't find out, but the Lord was with us, so we made it safe. But still, the sunset was beautiful regardless. So what can we do? I think it's sometimes when we do our rice bowls and we pass them around, as priests, we just pass them around. This is the thing to do in Lent. I think we just have to encourage our parishioners more, explain to them what it is that we're doing, what the Catholic Church is doing in other places of the world. That we're not an NGO. We sound like an NGO sometimes, but we're not a non-governmental organization. We're ministers of the gospel, and we're there to minister to people. We're not there to proselytize. We're there to help them. Some of them may feel the call to conversion, but others may not feel the call to conversion. But I think for us is to encourage the parishioners to see what the Catholic Church is doing and how they can be part of it, especially during Lent, just by taking a rice bowl and putting a few dollars by the end of Lent as the fruit of their fasting. Share the Journey is an initiative from Pope Francis in regards to trying to bring, I'm wearing that thing. If you go on a trip like that, you have to wear stuff. But I forgot about that picture. But the important thing that Pope Francis wants us to do in regards to Share the Journey is a website and to be aware of the millions of people who are migrating around the globe. You can go to sharethejourney.org and you'll find more about it. And it's the Holy Father's initiative, just to raise awareness. He's not asking us for money. He's not asking us for anything specifically, just to pray for refugees around the globe who are part of that. He suggests that do small pilgrimages to pray for refugees. Like if you have to walk to the cathedral in your diocese, or go to a special shrine, buy food, so we get an idea. Some of the refugees travel for a month, up to 90 days, by food, just to get to a location, with nothing in their bag, just drinking water from the rain, basically. So, be important to do that. CRS education, our response helps Catholic educators give students a unique view of the world. Go to the website, and I'll show you the website in a bit. so you can know more. Ethical trade, purchasing things that are ethical, not just fair trade, like we used to talk about. Now we talk about ethical because sometimes there is slavery on the run. Maybe very fair, but it's not ethical. We gotta make sure that what we're consuming, especially in the culture that we live in, the things that we give people the right situations at work as well, in their work. Food Fast is a program for young people. If you are called to do something in a parish, and you got something to do in the parish, and you do something for youth, and you don't know what to do, go to CRS.org, look for youth, Food Fast, and you can do a retreat. It's already made for you. Like the readings, schedule, and everything, to do a retreat, a fasting retreat for a young program, for youth. And last but not least is confront global poverty, advocacy. Getting involved, talking to our legislators and lawmakers, and how to make sure that we fund programs like this that support the work of not only CRS, but other nonprofits. And CRS University is a new start, but I think it doesn't apply to you guys because you're already in this university. You're familiar with the Rice Bowl? So just get involved. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about clergy outreach at the bar. If anybody who wants to join, I'll be there tonight. I'll be sharing more of from the trip from Uganda, and also things that how you as a seminarian or priest or deacons can get involved in your own parish, in your own diocese. You don't have to go and give talks at seminarians or anything like that unless you want to. But how to implement these things from CRS in your own parish as well. But I'll be talking more about that tonight. And that's that. I don't know how to feel about it. One more thing is tonight, those who, I know you guys are busy. If you want to join tonight, I'll buy you a drink.
But that means you have to sit there and be with Father, not just like get a drink and play pool.
It won't be more than 40 minutes, 45 minutes, the conversation tonight.
Deeply grateful to Father Carlos for coming, and it's always a sacrifice when you're away from the parish. It simply is. And so